And today's our guest is Tom Zeeb from Traction Real Estate Mentors. Welcome, Tom. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Rama. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, I'm doing great. Hope you're too. So please go ahead and share a little bit more about your background, Tom.
Yeah. I started in real estate investing, Rama, because I didn't know what else to do. There's some people I see with kids, they always know what they want to be. Since they were 5 years old, 6 years old, they want to be whatever, a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist. I had no idea what I wanted to do. High school, college, after college, I was still trying to figure out what is it that I want to do. And all I did during that time was spend myself into financial oblivion. And I was in so much debt. I had racked up $113,000 worth of debt. And yeah, how do you dig out of that? And then I was stuck and I went, oh man, what am I going to do? How do I get out of this? And of all things, since I had no easy answer, I just escaped and I took a vacation. So I took a 2-week vacation with my friends and we went to India and we went whitewater rafting on the Ganges River, and it was a fantastic, adventurous time. I mean, it was honestly, it was totally awesome. There was one small problem though. We went through a very difficult class 5 rapid, and I went flying off the raft and got sucked underwater. So now I'm traveling down the Ganges underneath the water line. And there was a time where you're never really sure you're going to make it out. You're thinking, oh man, well, what if this is it? And instead of being scared or worried, I was just angry. I was mad that I hadn't done anything in life, that I still had never figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that I was just going along to get along. And all I did was spend, spend, spend far beyond my means. And I said, when I get out of this, when I get home, things are going to change. I'm going to find a different way. The problem was when I got home, I was still stuck. I still had the job. I couldn't get rid of it. I still had the debt, couldn't get rid of it. I would go, how do you get out of this without a gun or white powder? How do you pay off 113 grand in debt? And I had no idea until a friend of mine handed me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I know probably many of your listeners have read it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it answered a whole bunch of questions. All the frustrations I had when I was drowning were now kind of answered. Now, there was no how to, but Rich Dad told me there was one thing I need to do, and that was buy rental properties. So I took that, ran off, and I bought a 6-unit building in New York City because, that made a lot of sense. Landlord friendly New York City. My first deal was a 6-unit building that turned out to be a complete disaster of a deal. I eventually lost it on a short sale. I mean, nobody was paying a penny in rent, and I made a bad situation worse. But it got me moving in real estate, and for that, I'm forever grateful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. And what lessons you learned from that first deal and how exactly you navigated from there?
I'll tell you, there was a fascinating lesson about marketing and about how real estate investors are. And it wasn't obvious at first, but looking back, I go, oh man, that's a massive lesson. Here's what it was. When I was in trouble with the property, now my sister and I had gone in on the deal together. And the last time either of us went to the property, it was her. She went to try to collect some rents. And one of the tenants got very bossy with her, reached out, grabbed her head, and popped it into the wall. And I said, you know what, Tracy, we're done. Don't go back. Let's just let this thing go. So we were the classic desperate, motivated seller. I mean, you could have offered me anything. I don't care. I would have said yes. And so we reached out to other real estate investors to try to get them to take this off of our hands. We said, well, we're studying to become real estate investors. We're trying to learn what to do creative deals. We know there's people out there. Let's find them. So we were doing almost a reverse marketing campaign, right? A motivated seller trying to find an investor instead of investor finding motivated seller. And this is 20 plus years ago. So it was the early days of the internet, but we called every ad we could find. We called every flyer, every bandit sign, every little ad in the newspaper, whether it be a classified ad or little display ads. And Rama, guess how many investors picked up the phone?
Zero?
Zero, exactly. And guess how many of them called me back?
Zero?
Zero. Yeah,
Yeah.
zero. So wait a minute. These guys and gals are spending all this money on marketing, but they're not answering the phone and they're not returning phone calls? Trust me, I sounded desperate enough. I was your classic desperate motivated seller. And so the big lesson in that to me was, wait a minute, all these people are spending money on marketing. They're probably sitting there saying it doesn't work when it's not the marketing for them that wasn't working. It was the fact that they weren't returning a phone call. So the big lesson is you're worried about your competition. You think there's everyone out there is a real estate investor these days. Everyone's read those books. Everybody wants to do this. Yeah, a lot of people want it, but very few people actually do it consistently, and do it any good. So I tell all my students, don't worry about the competition. You, be good at what you do, and get good at marketing to find the deals, because your competition probably not answering the phone, and they're probably not returning the phone call.
Thank you for sharing that. Tell me, like, so far you might have done like 100 plus of deals, or more than that. And also you're helping a lot of your students in starting real estate, single family side of wholesaling stuff, and building their real estate stuff. Tell me, like, how exactly you're helping your students in mainly negotiation side.
The first and foremost importance is the marketing. You have to find the deals, but finding leads to work on, you don't call somebody and have them answer the phone and have it be a red hot deal. You have to make it a red hot deal. And that's negotiation. And you've got to get your negotiation skills up. When I started studying negotiation and learned it and practiced it and got good at it, everything changed. Suddenly there were more deals. I had more people saying yes. That's always a good thing. And for each of those deals, I was getting better prices. I was getting the motivated seller down further in price, which gave me more of a spread, which meant more profit for me. So those two things combined, I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of negotiation, because every deal needs to be made red hot. It doesn't just magically become red hot. They're lukewarm when you find them on marketing. You need to negotiate them into being red hot deals.
Got it. Thank you. Can you elaborate with taking any specific, deal, and how exactly you make it red hot deal?
Yeah. Well, first thing you always want to do is make sure you're testing the other person, the motivated seller that you're talking to see what are their real motivations. Get to know them, get to know what they're after, ask them what they're after, kind of make them feel like they can have what they're after, which is, the freedom from being, not having to do with the house anymore, and then what they're going to spend the money on and how their life's going to get better. Because when they can visualize that in their mind and taste that, they're much more likely to want to move ahead. And then you start applying some negotiation techniques to put downward pressure on the price. One of the big ones that I love to use is I flinch. I flinch every time I hear a number. So no matter what the number is, if I ask, like, Rama, how much are you asking for this property?
Let's say 50K.
50,000? Really?
Yeah.
Now you're smiling, but how do you feel about your number after I flinched?
Yeah, maybe I feel like, it's overpriced or something like that.
Yeah, you feel like it's overpriced. Your price isn't right. It's too high. Well, but wait a minute. We don't even know what we're talking about. I literally just kind of said, say a price. We don't even know what house we're talking about. And yet you're uncomfortable about your number. You think you're overpriced. Everybody feels that way when somebody flinches at their number. So when you start off a conversation you ask what they're asking, you flinch, you make a big fuss about it, that instantly puts downward pressure on their pricing, and you're already starting to move that price in the direction that it needs to be for you as an investor to get a better deal.
Got it. And what other questions you would ask sellers to understanding their pain or whatever?
Yeah, I'd like to get down to the pain. Absolutely. Why are you selling? And now they'll give you an answer, but do you really think the first answer is the real deep reason? No, they tell you something that's kind of nice, and you go, okay, interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. If you keep at it, it's like an onion. If you keep peeling a layer off, eventually you get down to the true center. So you have to, whatever kind of nice platitude they tell you at the beginning, oh, that's great. That's interesting. Tell me more. And then don't be afraid to go for the kill. Don't be afraid to put a little bit of salt into their wounds. It's not to make them suffer. You're not doing it sadistically. You're doing it out of love. You're trying to make them think, like, what's it going to be like if you don't sell this property? What's the pressing need that you need to sell it? Have you thought about the ramifications if you don't do that? Because most people haven't done that. Most people won't put salt into the wounds and make them a little bit agitated. But you do that, you're doing them a favor. because you're getting them to think about a future that they may not actually want. And if that jumps them into action and gets them to sell the property and sell it to you, great. Then it's win-win-win all the way around. We're helping people out of their situations.
Absolutely. Share me any complicated scenario where you negotiated it smartly or you overcome negotiation techniques. Yeah.
Use it all the time. So it depends when you're in different situations on different deals. I had one situation. This is a classic principle of negotiation. You don't want to jump at the first offer, because if you say a price and I say yes, the first thought in your mind is, oh, he jumped really easy. I guess I could have gotten more. And so you know that. So sometimes you have to hold back. So I had a fella call me, and he left a message because my call center didn't answer the call. And he left a message with the address. So before I called him back, I was able to look the property up, run some comparables, get a sense of the price of it. I had an idea, okay, this place is worth about $350,000 to $360,000. All right, great. So I call him up on the phone and start talking. And I said, sir, how much are you asking for this property? And he said, $80,000. I went, 80,000? Wow. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, I flinched, but it was almost a very natural flinch because this is basically a deal right out of the gate. I don't care how messed up the property is. I can bulldoze that thing down and rebuild it. With that type of spread between 80 and 360, it's a deal. But I can't jump and say yes right away. I have to make him fight for his price. I have to make him bring me up to his price, quote unquote. So you got to lean back on your training. And I went, ooh, 80,000. And then I countered with, I didn't go too gratuitously low, but I countered with 71,579. Because another technique is to always use specific numbers. Because I don't know, how does that number sound to you? Instead of 70, I said 71,579. If I said that to you, Rama, what do you think about that number?
Maybe it's a realistic number, or naturally it came. No, you
Yeah.
did your homework and you came up with that number. Yeah.
Bingo. I did my homework and it sounds realistic. It sounds like I put some real heavy thought into it. Now, did I? Not really. I just threw a bunch of weird numbers at the end of it. So never offer an even number. Always use something specific, something really odd, 71,579. It just has it looks like you scientifically calculated it. It looks like you really know what you're doing. Therefore, your offer is taken more seriously. Now, we settled on 75,000. And there's another lesson in this as well. Because we settled on that. I said, I'm going to send you the contract. I need you to sign it, send it back. But the phone rings the next day, and it's the seller. And he said, Mr. Zeeb, somebody else that I had called me back. Remember, nobody answers the phone, barely anyone calls him back. Well, finally, someone called him back. And he goes, this guy is willing to give me the full 80. Wow, you think? Gosh, I can't imagine. But so the temptation, again, on my part, is to leapfrog and go, well, I'll give you 85 or 90 or 100. I mean, who cares? The deal can handle it. But that's the wrong answer. The right answer from a negotiation perspective is to stop and ask him, what is it that he's after? I said, sir, what exactly are you asking me to do? He said, well, he goes, I don't know what it is. I don't trust this other guy. I like you. I trust you. I want to do business with you. Could you go back to the full 80? He just wants the full 80, quote unquote. I'm thinking, interesting. Now think about it. This other guy gives him exactly what he wants out of the gate. And he doesn't trust him. He doesn't like him. He doesn't want to do business with him. I'm playing a game, doing a little bit of a dance with him. And he trusts me. Because that back and forth and making somebody fight for their price, fight in a good way, right? But have to, wrestle for it a little bit. That actually locks that person into you, because the rapport that's built is critical in the negotiation.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a beautiful technique. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And would you share some best practices or some tips around good negotiation?
Always flinch. Always ask for more than you expect to get. So don't be afraid to go low. You want them to tell you no the first time, right? You want them to bring you up. That means they say no to your first offer. If they say yes to your first offer, you're always going to wonder how much more they would have gone. That means you went too high. And I find a lot of people sometimes are afraid. They go, well, I wouldn't take that offer. Well, no kidding. You don't want them to take it either. What you're trying to do is see if they're motivated enough to respond to you. And you go somewhere low and then they come up. And so there's nothing wrong with that. And use specific numbers each and every time and frame it out. Another big tip I like to tell people is a technique called bracketing. So you build a bracket around where your target price is. So Rama, where do things tend to meet? Where do we meet? We meet in the
Middle.
middle. It just
Yeah.
seems fair. Let's meet in the middle. Everyone gave up their, okay, well, if we know people feel that way and they feel that's fair, then what bracketing does is it engineers where the middle is. So I create the middle to be exactly where I need it to be. The middle is my maximum allowable offer. That's my middle. So let's say that's, I don't know, 300,000. And if I ask them how much they're asking for the property, they say 350. Well, they're 50 grand above where I need to be, which means to create a bracket with my target of 300 in the middle, they're 50,000 high. I need to go 50,000 low. So I'm going to start at 250. Although, like I said, with specific numbers, I'll start at 251,579. So I'm going to blend all these techniques together. Now I've got a bracket that we're both going to move towards the middle. We're going to move towards where I need it to be. So that's a whole bunch of tips combined into one.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add on, negotiation side, strategies, or anything else?
Practice. That's what everybody needs. Practice. If it seems confusing, listen to this part of your podcast again, and then practice it. Just try it. That's all I ask. Try it. Try flinching at a number. Watch what happens. It doesn't even have to be a real estate thing. Just flinch at the store. I know the price is on the tag. Who cares? Flinch anyway. You might get a 10% off from the manager. Trust me, it works all the time.
And let's move towards a little bit more onto marketing side. So why marketing is dies, what to do now in current market situations?
When marketing dies because people don't keep at it consistently, right? They do it once, so it didn't work magically the first time. They don't keep any consistency at it. Is one reason marketing is the most common reason marketing dies. Another reason sometimes is in the background. I mean, sometimes things get overdone. I've been in certain markets where suddenly somebody will start doing courthouse research, and rather than use it for themselves, they start selling the list. So suddenly everybody has that list. And so every other investor, it's cheaper to buy it from somebody than do it themselves because most investors are lazy. So next thing you know, there's too much marketing going to a very tight list. That happens sometimes, not that often, but I've seen it happen before. But the largest thing that'll kill marketing is a lack of consistency, a lack of frequency, a lack of repetition.
Yeah, totally agree in that. Consistency is key for success, right? So for we can apply to like marketing, sales, or whatever, everything, right?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Next, like 3 major screw ups that can knock you out of business.
3 major screw ups that knock you out of business. No marketing. It's that entry gate. It's the lifeblood of the business. If you don't get that right, you have nothing. So the biggest screw up I see with people is that they don't do any marketing, or they think about doing marketing. Well, that's not marketing. Or they're planning to market. Well, that's not marketing. The only thing that is actually marketing is getting out there and doing your marketing to make things happen. The second big screw up is what I've just been kind of talking about, the lack of any repetition. You've got to have a repetition cycle. You got to multiply your efforts and you got to keep at it. People don't remember a message or necessarily connect with it the first time they see it. It takes a few different times of seeing it. And that's, for whatever reason, we seem to forget that as real estate investors trying to find deals. And yet the evidence is all around us, because if you turn on the TV, there's commercials you know by heart. And if you listen to the radio, there's radio commercials that you're singing along with because you can't get them out of your head. Well, that's not because you've seen it or heard it one time. It's because you've heard it and seen it so many times, it's imprinted in your brain. But that's the repetition. And we know it works for them, but why do we not think that works for us? Because it does. We need to have the repetition. We need to keep getting that same message that connects with our market, connects with our audience of motivated sellers. We need to keep repeating that message so that they get it. And when they're ready, they call us.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome tip. Thank you. And you might have seen a lot of this stuff, like investors are never struggle with their businesses, newbies struggle with how to get started, like intermediate stuff, like they will advance into their investing, but they might fail, and how exactly they can fix their, once they start this stuff?
It's great when you can get a fast win because then it boosts your confidence level so much. I think one of the problems here is it's overwhelming. I mean, you're something, I want to be a real estate investor. There's all this stuff to learn. There's all these things to do. So it's the old adage about how do you eat an elephant? You have to do it one bite at a time. So it's break your tasks down. And I would tell people, just get out there and start practicing. Don't think you have to learn everything first. Just start to get your feet wet, dip your toe in the water and start to enter and wade into the water and watch what happens. And do that by making some calls. It's the fastest way of getting into the business and start to get yourself loosened up as you speak to people, start to get good at talking to people, starting negotiations. And the best way to do that is just find a bunch of for sale by owners and call them. Maybe you see it in the newspaper, you might see the signs on the street, you can go to Craigslist, find 3 and call them. Just start with that nice little small nugget, call 3 people. And you're probably going to have 3 awful conversations. I mean, let's be honest, right? It's your first time out. It's not going to go smooth. Who cares? People you're never going to meet, that you're never going to see again, were mean to you or nasty to you, or the call didn't go right. Who cares? You're doing it for practice. They want to be called. That's why they're advertising. So call them and start the process of talking to them, because you have to get your feet wet and you have to start being a real estate investor. So start by doing what real estate investors do. That's calling prospects and starting to talk to them.
And what's your take on current market situation? How exactly you're navigating?
Kind of the crystal ball aspect of it. What's going to happen in the market and what's going on. In general, I'm happy. Which, people think, how are you happy? Things are going down. Things aren't going down. The top of the market slows down. The retail market slows down. Guess what? I don't particularly care. I deal with motivated sellers who need to sell a property even more than they want to sell it. And if one of their big options in the past was to be able to go to an agent and list the property on the open market, and, come on, the last few years, if you did that, you would generally get 17 offers within 3 minutes of listing it, right? The market's hot, hot, hot. Okay, well, that means they're doing that and not coming to me. If the retail market's quieting down and it's not as easy to just list it and get offers, then they need me more than ever. So I think as creative real estate investors, our time is coming back again. I think this slowdown in the retail market is a good thing because it increases the flow of deals to us because people have less options.
Awesome. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you. So let's move on to personal side. So what habits are helping you to be successful?
Habits that help me be successful. Well, look, I've talked a lot about the need for consistency and repetition, but maybe you're like me and that's hard, right? Maybe I'm a little too ADD, or it's hard to remember things, or what do I have to do today? I don't remember. Well, you know what? There's this thing called a calendar. One of the simplest things I do is I put everything on my calendar with reminders. So everything is written down, but it's written down electronically. So the calendar on my email program on my laptop is synced with the calendar on my phone, which is, when the thing buzzes and reminds me, so you don't miss anything. So if I look at my agenda for today, I've looked at my calendar for today, after I'm done talking to you, I have to do some marketing. You know how I know? Because my calendar tells me to do that. So I make appointments with myself to do things on a regular basis. So I have a weekly marketing meeting with myself. That's it. And I treat that appointment as seriously as catching an airplane or as seriously as going to a doctor's visit, because my marketing is that serious. So I have to do it. So I have found one of the things that helps keep me disciplined is to enforce the discipline with my own calendar. And I know that sounds like a horrendously low-tech solution, but it doesn't need to get any more complicated than that. Make appointments with yourself, put everything on the calendar, and watch what happens to your business.
And share me any breakthrough moment, Tom.
One of my biggest breakthrough moments was when I started practicing negotiation so much that it just became second nature. And then watching 2 things occur. The first was more deals happen at better prices. But I will admit there was also some regret that was occurring, because as I learned what I was doing, that also pointed out to me what I had done wrong in the past. I went, oh, that's why they said no to me. That's why they never called me back. Oh, I could have made more money on that deal. So the, I mean, you have to go through that to a degree. That's going to happen when you start to learn and study negotiation the right way. You're going to think back to ghosts of deals past and realize, oh, I could have made that into a deal, or I could have made that a better deal. You can't worry about it. Just move ahead being a better negotiator.
So any books that impacted your life other than Robert Kiyosaki's?
Yeah. Yeah, that's obviously the classic. I'll tell you a book that I really love that had helped me a lot understand, I guess in negotiation, we call it frame control, the way you present yourself and the way you hold your frame, no matter who you're dealing with. There's a book called To Be or Not to Be Intimidated. It's by Robert Ringer. It's an excellent read. It's a fun read. It's slightly real estate focused because he's talking a little bit about being a commercial broker and the different elements of dealing with life in the business jungle. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. To Be or Not to Be Intimidated by Robert Ringer.
Awesome. Thank you. And how can listeners can connect with you, Tom?
My websites are the best way. There's tomzeeb.com, T-O-M-Z as in zebra, E-E, B as in boy.com. That's a full podcast with a lot of training on negotiation. And if you like videos and see other types of trainings, go to my tractionrealestatementors.com website.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for sharing some best strategies around negotiation techniques. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure.